The pen stopped mid-signature. Officer Brielle Huxley's hand froze over the citation slip. Her eyes locked on the pink backpack wedged between the passenger seat and center console. Glittery unicorn stickers. A juice box holder dangling from the zipper. The kind of details that told a story before words ever could. The man standing beside his sedan, tall, lean, wearing a faded red Henley that had seen too many wash cycles, shifted his weight from one foot to the other. His hand stayed visible at his sides, fingers twitching slightly. Not from guilt, from exhaustion. License and registration, Brielle said, her voice steady but not cold. He handed them over without argument. His driver's license showed a younger version of himself. Same dark skin, same close-cropped hair, but the eyes in that photo hadn't learned what tired meant yet. The name read, Caleb Duran. She glanced at the registration. Vehicle owner, Caleb Duran. No co-signer. No second name. You were doing 41 in a 35, she said, tapping her pen against the clipboard. School zone ends at 9. It's 8:53. Caleb exhaled through his nose. I know. I'm sorry. My daughter. She forgot her math homework, and I had to turn around, and then the crossing guard was new, and he stopped himself. I'm not making excuses. I was speeding. Brielle's gaze drifted back to that backpack. She'd seen plenty of cars with kid stuff inside, but there was something about the way it sat there. Alone, no second bag, no matching lunchbox for a sibling, that made her pause. Where's your daughter now? She asked. Dropped her at Maplewood Elementary about 10 minutes ago. His voice softened when he mentioned her. She's in 3rd grade, 9 years old. Her name's Zoe. Hi, viewers. Kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Brielle clicked her pen twice. The sound cut through the quiet suburban street. Behind them, a minivan rolled past, slow enough that the driver, a middle-aged woman with oversized sunglasses, craned her neck to watch. This was Maplewood. Nothing stayed private for long. You marry Mr. Duran? The question came out before she could stop it. Not protocol, not professional, but something about the way he carried himself, shoulders squared despite the weight pressing down on them, made her curious. Caleb blinked. No, not anymore. How long? 3 years. He rubbed the back of his neck. Just me and Zoe now. Brielle nodded slowly. She should have finished writing the ticket. Should have handed it over, said drive safer, walked back to her cruiser. But her pen stayed frozen above the paper. Single dad, huh? The corner of her mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. You look like you've been through the ringer. Caleb let out a short laugh, half embarrassed, half relieved. That obvious? The grease under your nails. The coffee stain on your collar. The fact that you're apologizing for a 7-mile-over ticket like it's a felony. She tilted her head. Yeah, it's obvious. For a moment, something shifted in the air between them. Not romantic. Not yet. Just two people recognizing something human in each other. Brielle glanced down at the ticket, then back at him. Her thumb hovered over the signature line. If you weren't married, she said quietly, her voice barely loud enough to carry over the breeze, I'd add my number to this ticket. Caleb's eyes widened. His lips parted, but no words came out. Before he could respond, another engine rumbled up behind them. Loud, deliberate, the kind of arrival meant to announce authority. Brielle's posture stiffened. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Everything all right here, Officer Huxley? The voice came from behind her, deep, sharp, carrying the weight of too many years behind a badge. Sergeant Daniel Pierce stepped out of his patrol SUV, aviator sunglasses reflecting the morning light. His uniform was crisp, his boots polished, his jaw set in that way men do when they think they own a situation. Brielle turned, slipping the ticket into her clipboard. Just finishing up, Sergeant. Pierce's gaze slid past her to Caleb. His eyes narrowed just slightly. Just enough. Saw you pulled over, Pierce said, his tone casual but his body language anything but. Thought I'd make sure you didn't need backup. For a speeding ticket? Brielle's voice stayed even. Pierce stepped closer, positioning himself between her and Caleb. You never know. Caleb said nothing. His hands stayed at his sides, but his shoulders tensed. He'd seen this before. The way some cops looked at men who looked like him. The way a routine stop could turn into something else if the wrong person decided to make it that way. Brielle handed Caleb the ticket, her fingers brushing his for half a second. "Drive safer, Mr. Duran." He took it without looking at her. His eyes stayed on Pierce. "Yes, ma'am." He climbed back in his car, hands steady on the wheel, and pulled away slowly. Too slowly. The kind of careful driving that came from knowing one wrong move could cost everything. Pierce watched until the sedan disappeared around the corner. Then he turned to Brielle, his jaw tight. "You get friendly with speeders now?" Brielle met his gaze. "I was doing my job. Looked like more than that." She didn't flinch. "Then you were looking too close." Pierce's jaw worked side to side. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then he stepped back, adjusted his belt, and forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just looking out for you, Huxley. This job's easier when you keep boundaries." He walked back to his SUV, climbed in, and drove off without another word. Brielle stood there for a long moment, the ticket book still in her hand. The street was quiet again, normal again, but something had shifted, something she couldn't name yet. She glanced down at the carbon copy of the ticket she'd written for Caleb Duran. At the bottom, in the notes section, she'd scribbled, "Single dad. Be kind." She folded it, slipped it into her pocket, and got back in her cruiser. By the time she pulled onto the main road, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Stay away from him. Last warning." Have you ever had a moment where a single conversation changed everything? Drop a comment below, because for Caleb and Brielle, that roadside stop was about to unravel both their lives. Caleb sat in his car outside the auto shop, engine off, hands still gripping the steering wheel. The ticket lay on the passenger seat where Zoe's backpack had been an hour ago. He stared at it. $75 fine, court date optional, but it wasn't the money that bothered him. Money was always tight. That was nothing new. It was the way that Sargent had looked at him, like he was waiting for an excuse. Caleb exhaled and shoved the ticket into the glove compartment. He didn't have time to sit here. His shift started in 4 minutes, and Tony, the shop foreman, had already written him up twice this month for clocking in late. He grabbed his lunch bag from the back seat and headed inside. The shop smelled like motor oil and burnt rubber, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like angry wasps. 3 cars sat on lifts, their undercarriages exposed like gutted fish. The radio in the corner played classic rock, barely audible over the hiss of pneumatic tools. Tony stood near the front desk, arms crossed, a clipboard in one hand. He was a stocky man in his 50s, with graying hair slicked back and a perpetual scowl that made him look like he'd been chewing nails for breakfast. "Duran, you're late." Caleb checked his watch. "By 2 minutes. Late is late." Tony scribbled something on his clipboard. "That's 3 times this week." "My daughter." "I don't care about your daughter." Tony cut him off. "I care about my schedule." "You got a problem with that? There's 20 guys outside who'd take your spot tomorrow." Caleb bit the inside of his cheek. He needed this job. Needed it more than Tony knew. More than anyone knew. "Won't happen again," he said quietly. Tony grunted, turned, and walked back toward the office. Caleb grabbed his coveralls from the locker and pulled them on over his jeans. His hands moved on autopilot, muscle memory from 3 years of doing the same routine. Clock in. Tie the coveralls. Grab the toolbox. Get under a car. His co-worker, Marcus, a younger guy with locks tied back in a ponytail, leaned against the workbench, wiping his hands with a rag. "Tony's in a mood today," Marcus muttered. "What did you do?" "Existed," Caleb said flatly. Marcus smirked. "Yeah, that'll do it." Caleb knelt beside the nearest car, a Honda Accord with a busted transmission, and slid underneath. The world narrowed to metal and shadows. This was the part of the day he didn't mind. Down here, nobody asked questions. Nobody judged him. He was just a pair of hands fixing something broken. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. It buzzed again. With a sigh, he slid out from under the car and pulled it out. 2 missed calls, both from the same number. Maplewood Elementary School. His stomach dropped. He stood, wiping his hands on his coveralls, and stepped outside into the parking lot. The air was warmer now, the morning chill burned off by midday sun. He dialed the school back, his thumb tapping against his leg. "Maplewood Elementary, this is Ms. Carver." "Hi, this is Caleb Duran. Zoe's dad." I got a call. There was a pause. Yes, Mr. Duran. We need you to come pick up Zoe. His chest tightened. Is she okay? Is she hurt? She's fine physically, Miss Carver said carefully. But there was an incident during recess, and we think it's best if she goes home for the day. What kind of incident? Another pause. Longer this time. She got into an argument with another student. Things escalated. We'd prefer to discuss it in person. Caleb closed his eyes. I'll be there in 15 minutes. He hung up, shoved the phone back into his pocket, and walked back inside. Tony was at the front desk again, typing something into the computer. I need to leave, Caleb said. Tony didn't look up. Shift just started. My daughter's school called. I need to pick her up. Not my problem. Caleb's jaw tightened. It's an emergency. Tony finally looked at him, his expression flat. You leave now. Don't bother coming back tomorrow. The shop went quiet. Marcus stopped mid-wrench. Another mechanic, older, balding, glanced over from the tire rack. Caleb stared at Tony for a long moment. Then he pulled off his coveralls, tossed them onto the bench, and walked out. The elementary school parking lot was nearly empty when Caleb arrived. He parked near the front entrance and jogged inside, his heart pounding harder than it should have been. The hallway smelled like floor cleaner and pencil shavings. A bulletin board near the office displayed construction paper turkeys with students' names written in crayon. Zoe's was in the top left corner, bright purple feathers, lopsided but proud. Ms. Carver met him at the front desk. She was younger than he expected, maybe late 20s, with glasses perched on her nose and a kind face that didn't quite hide her concern. Mr. Duran, thanks for coming. Where's Zoe? She's in the counselor's office. Follow me. They walked down a short hallway and stopped outside a door with a window. Inside, Zoe sat in a chair that was too big for her, her legs swinging above the floor. Her arms were crossed, her face set in that stubborn expression she got when she was trying not to cry. Caleb's chest ached. What happened? He asked quietly. Ms. Carver folded her hands. During recess, another student made a comment about Zoe's family situation, specifically about you being a single parent. Zoe reacted. She pushed the other student. Caleb's fists clenched at his sides. And what did the other kids say? That's not. What did they say? Ms. Carver hesitated. They said her dad was a loser who couldn't keep a job. The words hit him like a punch to the gut. Where'd they hear that? Caleb's voice was low, controlled. We're looking into it, Ms. Carver said. But right now, we need to focus on Zoe's behavior. Pushing another student is... She was defending me. I understand that. But we have a zero-tolerance policy for physical altercations. Caleb nodded slowly. His throat felt tight. Can I take her home? Yes. But she'll be suspended for the rest of the week. He didn't argue. He walked into the counselor's office, and the moment Zoe saw him, her face crumpled. She ran to him, wrapping her arms around his waist, and buried her face in his chest. I'm sorry, Daddy, she whispered. He knelt down, holding her close. You didn't do anything wrong, baby. Not one thing. But even as he said it, he knew the truth. Someone was talking. Someone had put that idea in a kid's head. And whoever it was, they wanted to make sure Caleb's life stayed difficult. As they walked out of the school, Zoe's small hand in his, Caleb glanced back at the building. He didn't know it yet, but the whispers had already started, and they were only going to get louder. What would you do if your child was punished for defending your name? Tell us in the comments. Because Caleb's fight was just beginning. The diner smelled like burnt coffee and bacon grease. Caleb slid into a booth near the back, Zoe scooting in across from him. She still hadn't said much since they left the school, her eyes fixed on the laminated menu, even though she always ordered the same thing, chocolate chip pancakes with extra whipped cream. The waitress, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and a name tag that read Donna, appeared with a notepad and a tired smile. What can I get you two? Pancakes, Zoe said quietly. With extra whipped cream, Caleb added. And I'll take a burger. Coffee, too. Donna scribbled it down and walked off. The diner wasn't crowded, just a handful of people scattered across booths, most of them staring at their phones or newspapers. The jukebox in the corner played something old and slow, the kind of song that made the world feel stuck in time. Caleb leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. You want to talk about it? Zoe shook her head. Zoe. She looked up at him, her eyes red-rimmed. They said you couldn't keep a job, that you were broke. That's why Mom left. Caleb's jaw tightened. He forced his voice to stay calm. And what did you say? I said that's not true. That you work hard. That you take care of me. Her voice cracked. But they just laughed. He reached across the table and took her hand. Listen to me. People are going to say things. Mean things. Things that aren't fair. But you can't let them change how you see yourself. Or how you see me. But why do they say it? Because some people need someone to look down on. Makes them feel bigger. Zoe's lip trembled. I just wanted them to stop. I know, baby. I know. Donna returned with their food, sliding the plates onto the table. Zoe poked at her pancakes, her appetite clearly gone. Caleb didn't touch his burger. They sat in silence for a while, the hum of the diner filling the space between them. Then Caleb's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and his stomach sank. Unknown number. Heard your kid got suspended. Guess the apple doesn't fall far. He stared at the message, his pulse pounding in his ears. Daddy. He shoved the phone back into his pocket and forced a smile. It's nothing. Eat your pancakes. But it wasn't nothing. Someone was watching. Someone knew what happened at the school, and they wanted him to know they were paying attention. Caleb dropped Zoe off at his neighbor's house, an older woman named Mrs. Travers who watched her sometimes when he worked late shifts. She didn't ask questions, just gave Zoe a hug and told her to pick out a movie. By the time Caleb got back to his car, it was nearly 3 in the afternoon. He sat in the driver's seat, staring at his phone. 3 more messages had come through. Unknown number. You think you could just smile at cops and get away with it? Unknown number. Stay in your lane, Duran. Unknown number. Or next time, it won't just be your kid's reputation on the line. His hand shook, not from fear, from rage. He dialed the number. It rang twice, then went to a generic voicemail. He hung up and tried again. Same result. Whoever this was, they weren't stupid. Caleb leaned back in his seat, eyes closed, trying to think. The traffic stop. The sergeant. The way he'd looked at him like he was already guilty of something. It didn't take a genius to connect the dots. He pulled out the ticket from his glove compartment and stared at it. Officer Brielle Huxley. Badge number 4297. At the bottom, in the notes section, she'd written, Single Dad. Be kind. He didn't know why she'd written that. Didn't know if it mattered. But it was the only thing about that morning that felt like it came from a real person instead of a uniform. He folded the ticket and shoved it back into the glove box. Then his phone rang. Not a text this time. An actual call. Tony, auto shop. Caleb answered. Yeah. Duran. We need to talk. I'm not coming back to apologize if that's what. It's not that. Tony's voice was different. Quieter. Almost uncomfortable. Someone called the shop today. Said they were from the police department. Said you were under investigation. Caleb's blood went cold. Investigation for what? They didn't say. Just said we should be careful about keeping you employed. That you might be unreliable. That's a lie. I don't care if it's a lie or not, Tony said. I can't have cops sniffing around my business. I'm putting you on leave until this gets sorted out. Tony, it's done, Duran. Don't come back until you clear this up. The line went dead. Caleb sat there, phone still pressed to his ear, the silence roaring louder than any words could. He'd been fired. Or close enough. And whoever was behind this was just getting started. Why does it feel like the system protects the wrong people? Drop your thoughts below, because Caleb was about to learn just how far someone with a badge could reach. Officer Brielle Huxley sat in the locker room, pulling off her duty belt with slow, deliberate movements. Her shift had ended 20 minutes ago, but she wasn't in a hurry to leave. The station was quieter at this hour, just the hum of fluorescent lights and the occasional murmur of voices from dispatch down the hall. She opened her locker and stared at the photo taped inside the door. Her father, in his uniform, standing beside a younger version of her. She couldn't have been more than 10 in that picture, her hair in 2 tight braids, her smile gap-toothed and proud. He'd been a cop too, a good one, the kind who knew everyone's name in the neighborhood, the kind who bought groceries for families who couldn't afford them and didn't make a big deal about it. He'd raised her alone after her mom died. Never complained. Never acted like it was too hard. She touched the photo, just for a second, then closed the locker. Huxley. She turned. Sergeant Pierce stood in the doorway, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "Sergeant." He stepped inside, letting the door swing shut behind him. The locker room felt smaller with him in it. "We need to talk about this morning," he said. Brielle's posture straightened. "What about it?" "That stop. The speeding ticket." Pierce's jaw tightened. "You got too friendly. I wrote him a ticket. That's my job." You smiled at him. Brielle's eyes narrowed. So, it sends the wrong message." Pierce stepped closer. "Guys like that, they see a smile, they think it's an invitation. You give them an inch, they take a mile." "Guys like what?" Pierce didn't answer. He didn't have to. Brielle's stomach turned. He was polite. Cooperative. "I did my job." "You did more than your job." Pierce's voice dropped, quiet but sharp. "I saw the way you looked at him. You don't know what you saw. I know enough." He leaned against the row of lockers, his arms still crossed. "Look, I'm not trying to give you a hard time. I'm trying to protect you. This job's easier when you keep boundaries. When you don't get distracted." Brielle held his gaze. "I'm not distracted." "Good. Then we're done here." He pushed off the lockers and walked toward the door. But before he left, he glanced back over his shoulder. "Just be smart, Huxley. That's all I'm saying." The door swung shut behind him. Brielle stood there for a long moment, her fists clenched at her sides. She knew what he was doing. The warning. The veiled threat. The implication that she owed him something just because he was her superior. She'd seen it before. Not to her, but to other officers. The way Pierce operated. The way he kept people in line. She grabbed her bag from the locker and walked out. The parking lot was nearly empty when she reached her car. The sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky streaked with deep orange and purple. She unlocked the door and slid into the driver's seat, tossing her bag onto the passenger side. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it out. A text from an unknown number. "He's not worth it. Drop it." Her pulse quickened. She stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the screen. Then another text came through. Last warning. She deleted both messages and shoved the phone into the cup holder. But her hands were shaking. That night, Brielle couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the day in her head. The traffic stop. The way Caleb had looked at her, not with fear, but with something like hope. The way Pierce had inserted himself into the situation, like he had a right to. She rolled over, grabbing her phone from the nightstand. She opened the department database and typed in Caleb's name. Caleb Duran, age 34. No país, no warrants, clean record. She scrolled through his file. A speeding ticket from 2 years ago. A parking violation from last summer. Nothing that suggested trouble. So why had Pierce acted like he was dangerous? She closed the app and opened her messages. The unknown number that had texted her earlier was still there. The messages deleted, but the numbers saved in her recent calls. She hesitated. Then she dialed it. It rang once. Twice. Then a voice answered. Deep. Familiar. "I told you to drop it, Huxley." Her stomach dropped. "Pierce. Who else would it be?" She sat up in bed, her heart pounding. "You sent those texts. I'm looking out for you. By threatening me? By keeping you from making a mistake." His voice was calm. Too calm. "That guy you pulled over? He's trouble. And you getting involved with him, even just smiling at him, makes you trouble too. He hasn't done anything wrong. Not yet." Pierce's tone shifted, colder now. "But he will. And when he does, I don't want your name attached to his." Brielle's grip tightened on the phone. "You don't get to decide who I talk to. Actually, I do. I'm your sergeant. And if I think you're compromised, I can pull you off patrol. Reassign you. Make your life very difficult." She didn't respond. "I'm trying to help you," Pierce said. "Don't make me do something we'll both regret." The line went dead. Brielle sat there, phone still in her hand, her breath coming in short bursts. She'd been warned before. By other officers. By women who'd worked under Pierce. They told her he was possessive, controlling, that he saw female officers as either assets or threats, nothing in between. She hadn't believed them. Not fully. Now she did. She set the phone down and lay back against the pillows. But sleep didn't come, because somewhere in the back of her mind, a voice whispered, "If he's willing to do this to you, what's he willing to do to Caleb?" Have you ever known something was wrong, but felt powerless to stop it? Comment below, because Brielle was about to make a choice that would change everything. Caleb woke to the sound of his phone ringing. He rolled over, squinting at the screen. 6:47 a.m. The number was local but unfamiliar. He answered, his voice rough with sleep. "Hello, Mr. Duran?" A woman's voice. Professional. Clipped. "Yeah. Who's this?" "This is Principal Harmon from Maplewood Elementary. I'm calling about Zoe." Caleb sat up, instantly awake. "Is she okay?" "She's fine. But we received a letter this morning. An anonymous letter. It raises some concerns about your fitness as a parent." The words hit him like a sledgehammer. "What?" "The letter alleges that you've been involved in criminal activity, that you're financially unstable, that Zoe may not be safe in your care." Caleb's hands started to shake. "That's a lie. All of it. I'm not saying I believe it, Mr. Duran, but we're required to report these things to Child Protective Services. They'll be conducting a home visit within the next few days." His chest tightened. "You're calling CPS on me? Based on an anonymous letter? We don't have a choice. It's protocol." "Protocol?" His voice rose. "Someone's lying about me, and you're just going to—" "Mr. Duran, I understand you're upset, but we have to take these allegations seriously. If there's nothing to them, the investigation will clear you. And in the meantime, what happens to Zoe?" Principal Harmon hesitated. "She can stay with you for now, but if CPS finds any reason for concern, they may recommend temporary placement with a relative or foster care." Caleb couldn't breathe. "This isn't happening. I'm sorry. Truly. But my hands are tied." The line went dead. Caleb sat there, phone still pressed to his ear, the walls of his bedroom closing in. Foster care. They were talking about taking Zoe away from him. He threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall and clattered to the floor. By 8 a.m., Caleb was sitting in his car outside the police station. He didn't know what he was going to say, didn't know if it would even matter, but he needed answers, needed to know who was doing this to him. He walked inside, the fluorescent lights harsh against his tired eyes. The front desk officer, a middle-aged man with a bored expression, glanced up from his computer. "Can I help you?" "I need to file a complaint." The officer slid a clipboard across the counter. "Fill this out." Caleb grabbed a pen and started writing. His hand shook as he filled in the details. Anonymous threats, false reports, retaliation. When he finished, he slid the clipboard back. The officer glanced at it, barely reading. "Someone will follow up within 5 to 7 business days." "That's it. That's the process." Caleb leaned forward, his voice low. "Someone's trying to destroy my life. And you're telling me to wait a week?" The officer's expression didn't change. "File says here you were pulled over yesterday. Speeding." "Yeah. So?" "And the officer who stopped you, Officer Huxley, she noted that you seemed agitated." Caleb's blood went cold. "I wasn't agitated. I was polite. That's not what the report says." "Then the report's wrong." The officer shrugged. "Look, man, I'm just telling you what's in the system. You want to file a complaint, fine, but don't expect it to go anywhere." Caleb stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned and walked out. The rest of the week was a slow-motion nightmare. The auto shop officially fired him. Tony didn't even bother calling, just sent a text saying his final paycheck would be mailed. The grocery store where Caleb sometimes picked up weekend shifts told him they didn't have any openings right now. The landlord left a voicemail asking if Caleb would be able to make rent on time. And every night, another anonymous text. "You should have stayed quiet. This is what happens when you don't know your place. She's not going to save you." Caleb stopped sleeping. He'd sit at the kitchen table, staring at bills he couldn't pay, wondering how long he had before everything collapsed. Zoe asked him once, her voice small, "Daddy, are we going to be okay?" He'd smiled and told her yes. But he didn't believe it. On Friday morning, a white sedan pulled up outside Caleb's apartment. A woman in a blazer stepped out, carrying a briefcase. She knocked on the door 3 times. Caleb opened it, already knowing who she was. "Mr. Duran? I am Sandra Kellerman, Child Protective Services." She didn't wait for an invitation. She walked inside, her eyes scanning the living room. The worn couch, the stack of unpaid bills on the coffee table, the pile of Zoe's homework on the kitchen counter. "Where's your daughter?" she asked. "At school." "And you're currently unemployed?" "Temporarily." "How are you covering expenses?" "I'm figuring it out." Ms. Kellerman made a note on her tablet. The school received a letter alleging neglect. Have you seen it? No, but I know it's a lie. Allegations are taken seriously, Mr. Duran. Even anonymous ones. Especially anonymous ones, Caleb muttered. She looked up. Excuse me. Nothing. Ms. Kellerman spent 20 minutes going through his apartment. She checked the fridge, looked in Zoe's room, asked about his work history, his support system, his plans for the future. When she finally left, she handed him a business card. I'll be filing my report by the end of next week. In the meantime, make sure Zoe's needs are being met. If anything changes, if you lose housing, if there's any incident, you need to contact me immediately. Caleb took the card. And if I don't, then we move to the next step. She walked out without another word. Caleb stood in the doorway, watching her car pull away. He didn't know who was behind this. Not for sure, but he was starting to figure it out. And whoever it was, they weren't going to stop. What would you do if someone tried to take everything from you? Tell us below, because Caleb's back was against the wall, and the fight was just beginning. The computer screen glowed blue in the darkness. Brielle sat at her kitchen table, her coffee gone cold 2 hours ago, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. The department database stared back at her. Rows of files, incident reports, personnel records. Everything she wasn't supposed to be looking at off the clock. She typed in a name, Daniel Pierce. The screen flickered. Loading. Then it appeared. 23 years on the force. 17 commendations. 2 internal investigations, both dismissed. Her eyes narrowed at that last part. She clicked on the first investigation. The report was thin. Too thin. A complaint from a patrol officer, female, alleging harassment. The case closed after 3 weeks. Insufficient evidence. The officer transferred to another precinct 2 months later. Brielle's jaw tightened. She clicked on the second investigation. Similar story. Different officer. Same outcome. She leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. This wasn't proof. Not yet. But it was a pattern. Her father's voice echoed in her head. Something he used to say when she was young and convinced someone at school was lying. People who get away with something once will do it again. And again. Until someone stops them. She pulled up Pierce's call logs from the past month. Hundreds of entries. Most of them routine. Dispatch calls, station check-ins, interdepartmental communication. But 3 calls stood out. All made within 24 hours of Caleb's traffic stop. All to local businesses. All logged as community outreach. Brielle clicked on the first one. The timestamp showed 2:47 p.m. The number matched a local auto shop, Tony's Garage. Her stomach dropped. She clicked on the second. A grocery store. The third, Maplewood Elementary School. Her hand shook as she reached for her phone. She dialed the auto shop, waited through 4 rings, then hung up before anyone answered. She didn't need confirmation. She already knew. Pierce had made those calls. Disguised his voice. Planted lies. Used his badge to destroy a man who'd done nothing wrong. And he'd done it because of her. Because Caleb had smiled at her. Because she'd smiled back. Brielle stood, pacing the length of her small kitchen. The linoleum floor creaked under her boots. She stopped at the window, staring out at the empty street below. She could walk away, pretend she hadn't seen anything. Keep her head down, her record clean, her career intact. That's what most people would do. That's what Pierce expected her to do. But her father hadn't raised her to look the other way. She turned back to the computer and opened a new window. Her fingers moved quickly now, no hesitation. She pulled up the dispatch recording system. Every call that came through the station was logged, time-stamped, archived. She searched for the date of Caleb's traffic stop. Found the time. Click play. Static crackled through her laptop speakers. Then Pierce's voice, unmistakable even through the distortion. Yeah, this is Officer Harris from Maplewood PD. I'm calling to verify employment for a Caleb Duran. We've had some complaints. Just need to confirm he's still working there. Brielle's breath caught. Officer Harris didn't exist. She'd checked the roster. Pierce had used a fake name. She kept listening. Yep, appreciate it. Just doing our due diligence. You know how it is. Got to keep the community safe. The recording ended. Brielle sat back, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. This was it. Evidence. Real, undeniable evidence. She hit download. The file saved to her desktop. She copied it to a flash drive, then deleted the original download from her computer. Covered her tracks. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Stop digging, Huxley. You won't like what you find." She stared at the message, her pulse racing. Then she typed back, "Try me." She hit send and turned off her phone. The next morning, Brielle walked into the station like it was any other day. She clocked in, grabbed her gear, nodded at the officers in the break room. No one looked at her twice. But when she passed Pierce in the hallway, he stopped. "Huxley." She turned, keeping her expression neutral. "Sergeant." He stepped closer, his voice low. "You working late last night?" Her stomach clenched, but she didn't flinch. "Went to bed early. Actually." "What?" Pierce studied her face, searching for a crack. "Someone accessed the database from your login. Around midnight." Her mind raced. She'd been careful, used her credentials, sure, but cleared the cache, covered her digital footprint. He shouldn't have been able to trace it, unless he was monitoring her specifically. "Must have been a glitch," she said evenly. "I was home, asleep." Pierce's jaw tightened. "Glitches don't search personnel files." "Then maybe someone stole my login." She met his gaze. "You should look into that. Security risk." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The hallway felt too small, the air too thick. Then Pierce smiled. Not warm, not friendly. A warning. "Be careful, Huxley. People who dig too deep sometimes fall in." He walked past her, his shoulder brushing hers just enough to feel deliberate. Brielle stood there, fists clenched at her sides, until he disappeared around the corner. Then she exhaled and pulled out her phone. She had one chance, one shot to get this right, and she was going to take it. Have you ever had to choose between your career and doing what's right? Drop your answer below. Because Brielle's next move would cost her everything. The courtroom smelled like old wood and floor polish. Caleb sat in the third row, hands folded in his lap, trying to keep his breathing steady. Zoe sat beside him, her small hand gripping his. She wore the only dress she owned, pale yellow with a white collar, and her hair was braided neatly down her back. She looked so small, too small for this. The family court judge, a woman in her 60s with silver-rimmed glasses and a no-nonsense expression, sat behind the bench, reviewing a stack of papers. Elise, Caleb's ex-wife, sat on the opposite side of the room with her attorney, a man in a sharp suit who looked like he'd never lost a case in his life. Caleb's attorney, a public defender named Mr. Lawson who looked fresh out of law school, shuffled through his notes, visibly nervous. This wasn't going to go well. The judge looked up. "We're here for a custody modification hearing. Ms. Elise Duran has petitioned for full custody of a minor child, Zoe Duran. Mr. Caleb Duran is contesting. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," both attorneys said in unison. The judge nodded. "Ms. Duran, your attorney may present your case." Elise's attorney stood, buttoning his jacket. "Your Honor, my client is seeking full custody due to Mr. Duran's inability to provide a stable home environment. In the past 2 weeks alone, Mr. Duran has lost his primary employment, been investigated by Child Protective Services, and has demonstrated a pattern of erratic behavior." Caleb's chest tightened. Erratic behavior. They were twisting everything. Furthermore, the attorney continued, Mr. Duran has been the subject of multiple complaints from local authorities. There are concerns about his judgment and his ability to prioritize his daughter's well-being. The judge glanced at Caleb. "Mr. Duran, do you have a response?" Mr. Lawson stood, clearing his throat. "Your Honor, my client has been the victim of a targeted harassment campaign. The job loss, the CPS investigation, none of it is based on legitimate concerns. Mr. Duran has been a devoted father for 3 years. His daughter is thriving in his care." Thriving? Elise's attorney scoffed. "The child was suspended from school last week for physically assaulting another student. She was defending her father," Mr. Lawson shot back, "which demonstrates poor impulse control, a behavior likely learned at home." Caleb's hands curled into fists. Zoe's grip on his hand tightened. The judge raised a hand. "That's enough. I've reviewed the CPS report. Ms. Kellerman noted concerns about financial instability, but found no evidence of neglect or abuse. However, stability is a factor in custody decisions." Caleb's stomach sank. The judge looked at him directly. "Mr. Duran, do you currently have employment?" I'm looking, Your Honor. That's not what I asked. No, ma'am. Not currently. The judge made a note. And your living situation? I'm in a one-bedroom apartment. Zoe has her own space. We're managing. Managing isn't the same as stable. Caleb swallowed hard. I'm doing my best. I'm sure you are. The judge's tone softened just slightly. But your best may not be enough right now. Zoe's eyes filled with tears. Caleb squeezed her hand, trying to hold it together. The judge looked at her notes again. I'm prepared to rule. The courtroom doors swung open. Everyone turned. Officer Brielle Huxley walked in, her uniform crisp, her badge gleaming under the fluorescent lights. She carried a manila folder in one hand, and her composure like armor. The judge frowned. Officer, this is a closed hearing. I apologize, Your Honor. Brielle's voice was steady, clear, but I have evidence relevant to this case. The judge's eyebrows rose. Evidence? Yes, ma'am. Brielle walked forward, stopping at the gate, separating the gallery from the bench. Evidence that Mr. Duran has been the victim of criminal retaliation by a member of law enforcement. The room went silent. Elise's attorney stood. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. Sit down, the judge said sharply. She looked at Brielle. Officer, what's your name and badge number? Officer Brielle Huxley, badge 4297, Maplewood Police Department. And what evidence are you presenting? Brielle opened the folder and pulled out several documents. Call logs, dispatch recordings, and falsified reports all linked to Sergeant Daniel Pierce. He used his position to sabotage Mr. Duran's employment, reputation, and custody case. The judge leaned forward. That's a serious allegation. I'm aware, Your Honor, but it's the truth. Brielle's voice didn't waver. Mr. Duran's job loss, the anonymous complaints, the CPS investigation, all of it traces back to Sergeant Pierce. He initiated contact with Mr. Duran's employer under false pretenses. He filed anonymous reports with the school. He used department resources to destroy an innocent man's life. The judge took the documents, scanning them quickly. Her expression darkened with each page. Caleb stared at Brielle, his throat tight. She'd come. She'd actually come. The judge looked up. Why would Sergeant Pierce do this? Brielle hesitated. Then she met the judge's gaze. Because Mr. Duran spoke to me during a traffic stop, and Sergeant Pierce didn't like it. The courtroom erupted. Elise's attorney stood, objecting. Mr. Lawson tried to speak. The judge banged her gavel. Order. I will have order. The room fell silent again. The judge looked at Brielle. You're aware that bringing this forward could end your career? Yes, ma'am. And you're doing it anyway? Brielle nodded. Because it's the right thing to do. The judge studied her for a long moment. Then she looked at the documents again. Finally, she set them down and removed her glasses. This hearing is postponed, pending an internal investigation into Sergeant Pierce's conduct. Mr. Duran, you will retain custody of your daughter until further notice. Ms. Duran, your petition is denied at this time. Elise's face went pale. Her attorney started to protest, but the judge cut him off. I said denied. This court does not tolerate abuse of power. She looked at Brielle. Officer Huxley, I'm forwarding this evidence to Internal Affairs. You'll be contacted. Understood, Your Honor. The judge banged her gavel. We're adjourned. Caleb sat there, frozen. Zoe buried her face in his chest, crying quietly. Brielle turned to leave, but Caleb called after her. Officer Huxley. She stopped, looked back. Thank you. She smiled, small, tired, real. You're welcome. Then she walked out of the courtroom, leaving the folder behind. And for the first time in weeks, Caleb could breathe. When was the last time someone stood up for you when it mattered most? Tell us in the comments, because Brielle just risked everything for the truth. The call came 3 days later. Brielle sat on her couch, staring at her phone as it buzzed on the coffee table. The caller ID read, Internal Affairs Division. She let it ring twice more before answering. Officer Huxley speaking. Officer Huxley, this is Lieutenant Denise Carver from Internal Affairs. We need you to come in for a statement regarding Sergeant Daniel Pierce. Brielle's pulse quickened. When? Today. 2 p.m. Can you make it? I'll be there. The line went dead. Brielle set the phone down and leaned back against the cushions. She'd known this was coming. Known at the moment she walked into that courtroom. But knowing didn't make it easier. She thought about her father again. Wondered what he would say if he were still alive. Probably something like, "You did good, baby girl. Real good." She hoped he was right. The Internal Affairs office was on the 3rd floor of the main precinct building. Brielle had never been up there before. Most officers hadn't. It was the kind of place you only visited if something had gone very wrong. Lieutenant Carver met her at the door. She was a tall black woman in her 50s, with short natural hair and eyes that missed nothing. "Officer Huxley, thank you for coming." "Of course." Carver led her into a small conference room. A recorder sat in the center of the table. Another officer, a man in plain clothes, sat in the corner, notepad in hand. "Have a seat," Carver said. Brielle sat, folding her hands on the table. Carver hit record. "This is Lieutenant Denise Carver, Internal Affairs Division, interviewing Officer Brielle Huxley regarding allegations against Sergeant Daniel Pierce." "Officer Huxley, do you understand that this interview is being recorded?" "Yes, ma'am." "And you're here voluntarily?" "Yes." Carver nodded. "Walk me through it. Start from the beginning." Brielle took a breath. Then she told them everything. The traffic stop, Pierce's reaction, the anonymous texts, the call logs, the dispatch recordings, the courtroom. She didn't leave anything out. When she finished, Carver sat back in her chair. "You access department records without authorization." "Yes, ma'am. That's a violation of policy." "I know. And you're aware that this could result in termination?" Brielle met her gaze. "I am." Carver studied her for a long moment. "Why'd you do it?" "Because it was the right thing to do. Even if it cost you your career." "Even then." Carver glanced at the other officer, then back at Brielle. "You know, most cops wouldn't have done what you did. Most would have looked the other way." "I'm not most cops." Carver smiled faintly. "No, you're not." She turned off the recorder. "We're launching a full investigation into Sergeant Pierce. Your testimony, combined with the evidence you provided, is more than enough to move forward. But you need to understand something. This is going to get ugly. Pierce has friends. People who'll try to discredit you. Protect him. I understand. And you're still willing to go through with it?" Brielle didn't hesitate. "Yes." Carver nodded. "All right. You're suspended pending the outcome of the investigation. Standard procedure. You'll get full pay, but you can't work patrol until this is resolved." "How long will that take?" "Weeks. Maybe months." Brielle stood. "I'll be ready." 2 weeks later, the news broke. Sergeant Daniel Pierce suspended amid misconduct investigation. The story ran in the local paper, on the evening news, across social media. Details were scarce, department policy, but the basics were there. Abuse of power, harassment, retaliation. Brielle watched the coverage from her living room, a mug of tea growing cold in her hands. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You just ruined a good man's career. Hope you're proud." She deleted it without responding. Another text came through. This one from Caleb. "Saw the news. Thank you. For everything." She smiled and typed back. "You're welcome. How's Zoe?" "She's good. We both are." Finally, Brielle set the phone down, her chest tight with something she couldn't quite name. Relief, maybe, or pride, or just exhaustion. She didn't know what came next. Didn't know if she'd get her badge back, or if Internal Affairs would decide she'd crossed too many lines. But she knew one thing for certain. She'd do it all again. If you had to choose between your job and your integrity, what would you do? Let us know below, because Brielle's fight was far from over. 3 months later, the auto shop smelled the same as it always had. Burnt rubber, motor oil, and the faint tang of old coffee. Caleb stood under Teach. The lift, tightening the bolts on a transmission, his hands steady and sure. The radio played classic rock in the background. Marcus worked 2 bays over, humming along to the music. Tony walked past, clipboard in hand, and stopped. "Duran, you got a minute?" Caleb slid out from under the car, wiping his hands on a rag. "Yeah, what's up?" Tony looked uncomfortable. He shifted his weight, glanced at the clipboard, then back at Caleb. "Look, I owe you an apology." Caleb blinked. "What?" "That whole thing a few months back. Letting you go. I didn't know what was really happening. Thought I was protecting the shop. But I was wrong." Caleb stared at him, unsure what to say. Tony cleared his throat. Cops came by last week. Asked questions about that call I got. Turns out it wasn't even a real officer. Just some guy pretending. He shook his head. Anyway, I'm sorry. You're a good worker. Always have been. Caleb nodded slowly. Thanks, Tony. Yeah, well, don't let it go to your head. Tony walked off, muttering something under his breath. Marcus grinned from across the bay. Did Tony just apologize? Someone marked the calendar. Caleb smiled. It felt good. Lighter. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Travers. Zoe's home from school. She made honor roll. Wanted you to know first. His chest swelled. He typed back quickly. Tell her I'm proud of her. I'll be home in an hour. Pizza night. He shoved the phone back in his pocket and got back to work. That evening, Caleb and Zoe sat on the couch, a pizza box open on the coffee table between them. Some animated movie played on the TV, but neither of them was really watching. Zoe leaned against his shoulder, her report card clutched in her hand. Miss Carter said I'm doing really good in math now. That's because you're smart, Caleb said, ruffling her hair. And because you helped me with my homework. Team effort. Zoe smiled. Then she looked up at him, her expression more serious. Daddy. Yeah, baby. Are things going to stay okay now? Caleb's throat tightened. He pulled her closer. Yeah, they are. Promise? Promise. She settled back against him, satisfied. Caleb stared at the TV, his mind wandering. Things weren't perfect. Money was still tight. The CPS case had been officially closed, but the memory of it lingered. And Elise, she'd backed off, but he knew she was still watching, waiting for him to slip. But they were okay. He and Zoe, they were going to be okay. His phone buzzed again. This time, a text from Brielle. Heard you got your job back. Congrats. He smiled and typed back. Thanks. How are you? Good. Teaching at the academy now. Turns out I like it. You're going to be great at it. Hope so. Take care of yourself, Caleb. And Zoe too. We will. You too. He set the phone down and looked at his daughter, her eyes drooping as the movie played on. Somewhere out there, justice had been served. Quietly. Imperfectly. But served all the same. And for tonight, that was enough. What does justice look like to you? Share your thoughts below, because sometimes the quiet wins matter most. Brielle stood at the front of the classroom, her hands folded behind her back, watching the 22 cadets seated before her. They were young, eager. Some of them looked like they still believed the badge would make them invincible. She used to look like that too. Today we're talking about integrity, she said, her voice calm but firm. Not the kind you put on a resume. The kind that costs you something. A few cadets exchanged glances. One, a young man in the front row, raised his hand. Yes. What do you mean, costs you? Brielle smiled faintly. I mean the kind of choice where doing the right thing means losing something you care about. Your job, your reputation, maybe even your career. The room went quiet. A few months ago, Brielle continued, I had to make that choice. I could have stayed silent, kept my head down, followed orders. But someone's life was being destroyed by someone in uniform. So I spoke up. She paused, letting the words settle. And yeah, it cost me. I was suspended, investigated. Had people I worked with for years stop talking to me. But I'd do it again, because the badge doesn't give us the right to hurt people. It gives us the responsibility to protect them, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. One of the cadets, a young woman with braids pulled back in a tight bun, raised her hand. What happened to the person you helped? Brielle's expression softened. He's doing okay now. Got his job back. His daughter's thriving. They're building their life again. And the officer who hurt him, he's facing charges. Lost his badge. The system worked. Eventually, the cadet nodded, thoughtful. Brielle glanced at the clock. All right, that's it for today. Read chapters 4 and 5 for next week. Dismissed. The cadets filed out, their voices filling the hallway. Brielle gathered her notes, slipping them into her bag. Her phone buzzed. A text from her former partner at the precinct. Heard they're offering you your badge back. You gonna take it? She stared at the message for a long moment. Then she typed back. I don't think so. I like where I am. She hit send and smiled. Across town, Caleb pulled into the driveway of his apartment building. Zoe jumped out of the car, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. Race you to the door, she shouted, already sprinting ahead. Caleb laughed and jogged after her, letting her win. Inside, the apartment smelled like the casserole Mrs. Travers had dropped off earlier. Zoe dumped her backpack by the couch and ran to the kitchen. "Can I have a snack?" "Just one. Dinner's in an hour." She grabbed an apple and plopped down at the table, swinging her legs. "Daddy, yeah. Do you think Officer Huxley will come visit us sometime?" Caleb paused, leaning against the counter. "Maybe. What? I want to say thank you for helping us." He smiled. "I think she'd like that." Zoe bit into her apple, satisfied. Caleb looked around the small apartment. The worn furniture, the stack of bills on the counter, the crayon drawings taped to the fridge. It wasn't much, but it was theirs, and that was more than enough. Later that night, after Zoe had gone to bed, Caleb sat on the couch with a cup of coffee, scrolling through his phone. A news article popped up in his feed. Former sergeant sentenced to 2 years for abuse of power. He clicked on it, skimming the details. Pierce had been convicted. Sentenced. His career was over. Caleb set the phone down and leaned back, closing his eyes. Justice wasn't loud. It didn't come with fanfare or applause. It was quiet, slow, sometimes messy, but it came. And when it did, it felt like breathing again. He thought about Brielle, about the risk she'd taken, the courage it required. He hoped she was happy, hoped she knew how much it mattered. Somewhere he was sure she did. Across town, Brielle sat on her balcony, a glass of wine in her hand, watching the stars. Her father used to say that the right thing was never easy, but it was always worth it. She believed him now more than ever. Her phone buzzed. A message from one of her cadets. "Thank you for today's lesson. It reminded me why I wanted to do this job." Brielle smiled and typed back, "You're going to be a great officer. Keep that fire." She set the phone down and looked back at the sky. The world wasn't perfect. People still lied. Systems still failed. Injustice still happened. But so did courage. So did integrity. So did people who chose to stand up when it would have been easier to sit down. And that, she thought, was worth fighting for. Kindness has power. When Caleb never fought Pierce with hate, only truth, that became his greatest weapon. Integrity outlasts influence. No title or badge can bury the truth forever. Don't judge by appearance. The tired single dad you look down on may carry more strength than an entire system. And poetic justice isn't loud. It's earned quietly. As Brielle once told her cadets, the law may not always see character first, but justice always does, eventually. Sometimes, the right people show up wearing the wrong uniform. And sometimes, grace comes with a badge. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because the next story will remind you why good hearts still matter. Drop your thoughts in the comments below and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Your story might inspire someone else to stand up when it counts. And remember, justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, but it always finds its way home.